Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution.
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 You want a revolution?
You say you want a revolution?
Revolution. The revolution.
It's going on right now.
Welcome to The Revolution, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we ask today's most successful entrepreneurs to share the tools and strategies they use to build relationships and connections to grow their revenue. Now, your host for The Revolution, John Corcoran.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm the host of this show. And if you are new to the show, go check out some of our past episodes. We've got some great past episodes in the archives with smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from companies ranging from Netflix to Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard, LendingTree, OpenTable, and many more. I'm also the co-founder of Rise25, where we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. And my guest today is Paige Velasquez Budde. She is a partner and CEO at Zilker Media. It's an Austin-based agency that builds out people-driven brands. She's been a featured speaker on various different digital marketing strategy and topics, and she's led workshops at national venues such as Harvard Medical School, Austin's own Alamo Drafthouse, Zilker Park, Hilton Hotel, and for organizations such as the Women Presidents Organization. She also has an amazing background as a musician and a performer, so we're going to ask her about that. And of course, this episode is brought to you by Rise25, where you help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with done-for-you podcasts and content marketing, something that Paige loves to talk about. She's a big fan of podcasts, and anyone who's a fan of podcasts is a friend of mine. So, Paige, so I'm excited to have you here today, and I'm happy to dive into some of these different topics. But first of all, you were like a Disney kid who at the ripe old age of 13 years old went on the road going and performing at different events around your home state of Texas for Disney. What was that experience like? How did you get up doing that at such a young age?
Well, thank you, John, so much for having me. And, it was a crazy experience to be honest. And I feel like I've almost had two careers in my life a little bit. Was, a musician growing up and started kind of right in the Disney circuit, where it was more, kind of pop and dance and, singing. And it was a lot of fun. And it's a lot of experience in terms of, one, just getting to travel around, two, learning how to balance, still going to public school and being out most of the time to do that type of stuff. But three, just also, my love of performing. That's something that fulfills me in terms of where I can push my creative energy. And also it really feels like my safe place is on stage and performing. And, I've had the opportunity to translate a little bit of that into what I do today, but you learn a lot. You learn a lot really quickly about management, about contracts, about what's the right opportunity, what's the wrong opportunity. And I feel like I learned really quickly and gained, a thick skin really early on because of that experience. And, I spent most of my childhood and my teenagers going audition after audition for various things. And I feel like it's great for me now looking back that I was told more. I was told no more than I was told yes. And so I feel like there's so much now looking back on it that I've been able to garner from those experiences.
What were from that? It's such a crazy experience at that age to be going out and doing that. I think about my own insecurities at that age, 13, 14 years old. I couldn't imagine being on stage and performing. But what was a high and what was a low from that experience from those years?
I would say a big high was just validation around songwriting. And that's something I really loved when I was very young. I believe this actually happened at 13. I had one of the top songs in the US that was voted on in Cosmo Girl magazine, which doesn't even exist anymore. But it was a female empowerment song. It was really fun. And that was a huge high because a lot of what I went through, which is probably a low on that side, was management teams telling me, what I can and can't do, all the way down to how I need to be cutting my hair and the type of sound that I need to have. And no, that's not right. Or, oh, dance this way. And, I didn't want to do any of that. And I think, a lot of that is why I kind of shifted later on in life in terms of how I want to pursue creative ventures. But what I learned from that was I can start owning a lot more of what I'm doing if I start writing my songs, and I can actually get my voice out there in a way that helps other people, but also I can start owning more of my career and what this looks like moving forward, and not be beholden to everyone else telling me this is what you need to do, this is the song you need to sing, those types of things.
Yeah. It's interesting now these days, artists need to control their audience in many ways, right? They need to have those social channels. They need to build up their Instagram. They need to build up their TikTok. They need to build up their YouTube channels. It's so much more than just going out and performing. They have to think about all these different things as well.
Absolutely. And it's beautiful to see it all grow this way, because there's so much more opportunity now to come out as an independent artist. Things like YouTube weren't really there until the later part of my career when I was transitioning out. And so I have some stuff up on YouTube that's still there, but it's pretty old. And that's because that's when it was kind of first coming to life. Facebook, I remember kind of mid-career was starting to come alive, and Reverb Nation, I think, was the big thing back then, where you were able to put out your songs, but it wasn't to scale like you can today. And it's so exciting for artists to see them be able to break full records completely on their own, and being able to build an audience and tour all while being independent. And I've seen so many wonderful Texas country artists that have been able to do that and be extremely successful with what they're doing. And so I'm excited to see that shift in terms of what the landscape looks like, especially for musicians, because that's a soft place in my heart and something I'll always love doing. Yeah,
it is really exciting to see them have more control and more direct communication channels with their audience.
Right.
I want to ask you about, in my career, I've had a lot of transitions from one career to another. And I know there's often a dark period in there, or a struggle as you go from, this period where, you got success in one area, but you're driven to try something new, to go to a new industry. And then all of a sudden it's like what you did in this other industry, it doesn't mean anything in this new industry. So what was that like for you? I know in the early 2013 time period, by then you're working, doing more social media and working within agencies. How did you get started in that? And what was that period like?
Yeah, so there was kind of a transition period, and I would say it was mainly while I was in college at the University of Texas here in Austin, and I was still doing, some things that were musician focused, which of course in Austin was very wonderful to do, but also I was starting to get excited about different opportunities in terms of what my future could look like and how I could have more ownership of that. And so I started just testing things out in terms of the experience that I could get. I did several types of PR, I did several types of digital marketing, and tried to get as many internships as possible, or areas of opportunity where I could jump in and support a team, just so I can learn and experience what that would be like. And so I did a lot of that. And, one of those really resonated with me and stuck. And that was being focused more on the book marketing agency side of things. And so representing authors that, were putting out business books, that were putting out healthcare books. That was kind of the bread and butter and what I really enjoyed doing. I think a lot of it, though, had to do with the culture of the team that was at that agency. So that's what I did kind of right out of college. And I started focusing on that. And it was really exciting because I had the opportunity, along with the team, to represent over 30 New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestselling authors, which was pretty life-changing to be part of those campaigns. And this agency was called Shelton Interactive, and was ran by Rusty Shelton, which is now my business partner at Zilker Media. And so it was just phenomenal to experience that. I would say 70 to 80% of our team is now part of Zilker Media as well. That was part of that previous agency. But it was exciting to really hone in on that passion of representing people and how do you build community of readership for those individuals through PR and through digital marketing. And that's where that transition really started to take place in terms of where I was really putting focus in terms of my energy and creative energy. And that's where the world of social media was really blossoming at that time. And there were so many new opportunities in terms of how you could reach an audience at scale that there weren't in the past. And so it was really fun kind of drilling in on that and learning how do we do that in this new landscape.
It's amazing. One, the parallels between what we were just talking about, musicians building up connections to their audience and authors, right? And just how much things have changed for both musicians and authors over the last 15, 20 years, the opportunities, but also the challenges for them as well. Take me through, if I was, let's say, a new author coming in, not one, and you've worked with some big ones, Chicken Soup for the Soul, Harvard, things like that. You've worked with some bigger authors, but take me through if I'm, let's say, a newbie author coming in to your office and I'm saying, I want to put out a book in a year. What do I need to know? What does an author is putting out a book these days need to be prepared? What kind of assets, what kind of resources, what kind of channels do they need to be on?
Yeah. The great thing is there is a lot of opportunity, and it's kind of like music. Now you don't have to go through a big traditional publisher to put out a book. You can self-publish a book, you can do hybrid publishing, or you can go the traditional route. And so there's many more options, but a lot of it comes down to how do you market it and how do you build a platform for yourself as an individual thought leader long-term. And so we encourage authors that come in the door, think beyond the book. The book is just one portion of your overarching strategy over time. So whether it looks like you're writing a book to grow a company, or you're writing a book because you want more speaking opportunities, or you want the opportunity to be selected for more boards, it's different for everybody. Some are really focused on what's that one-to-many impact with what they're doing and translating a one-to-one to one-to-many. So I would encourage everyone to look beyond the book and think about what is that end goal. And then let's work backward from there and leverage the book in order to help accomplish that. And so for authors, one thing that's going to be incredibly important for them is going to be the email list that they build over time. And that's what we call kind of that owned media audience. That's the biggest opportunity that we see in the landscape today, is that you no longer have to go through that traditional media. You no longer have to go through just social media. You can actually start to own the relationships. And we've seen it really need to be prevalent just in terms of their strategy, because the shifts that are happening with social media are happening so quickly in terms, LinkedIn owns the algorithm, Instagram owns their algorithm, Facebook owns the algorithm. And we learned that lesson the hard way, really back in 2013, when they started to make those switches. I think Facebook was the first one to do that, where they said, okay, now you have to pay us to reach everybody on the platform. And so that's something that we really focus in on with our clients, is how do we start to build connections to an audience that we can own and start to circumvent all of those traditional aspects of media. And it's important to have great press. It's important to have a solid social media presence, but we don't want to keep them there. We want to siphon off as much of that exposure as possible to build the relationships that we need to and grow the type of audience that we need to, that's going to be loyal over time.
You have a very interesting approach, because it's very digital media aware, focused. It's kind of, from my perception, a hybrid. There's PR elements to it. There's digital media elements to it. I've asked almost everyone this over the last 2 years. In March of 2020, when the pandemic starts to unfold, we see this is going to hit everything. What did you think? How did you think it was going to affect your business? And just take us back to what that experience was like.
Yeah, thinking back to March, that was a time where I feel like every business owner really didn't know what was happening next. But for a lot of our clients, especially those that were heavily event-based, it was so important that we had that digital foundation built out so that we could fall back and put all of our focus into growing that. And it was so important that we had those owned media lists that we've built with our clients over time so that we could activate them now more than ever. And so what was important for us was to make sure our clients were successful, number one, throughout this, and that they had a good long-term strategy that was event-proof, because we couldn't do gatherings. We couldn't rely on speaking opportunities that they had in terms of revenue. We couldn't rely on the heavy, events and shows that they were part of. And so that was something extremely important for us, was one, how do we look at what's going on right now? Some of our clients, especially in the healthcare space, had a lot of thought leadership around that. And even in the business space, had a lot of thought leadership around how to transform that business side of things. How do we make sure that we're speaking to that, but also making sure that we're being respectful of everything that's going on in several people's lives? And so again, a lot of that was having that foundation there and really being able to lean in on that and continue to grow that, but press the gas more than we had ever before on those areas.
What about I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile here, and it says, it isn't always 100% accurate to the month, but it says in summer 2019 is when you became CEO of Zilker Media. Yeah. So what about as not your clients, but you as the head of a company, it's like 8-9 months later after you've become CEO and, oh crap, this huge pandemic is hitting. What were you thinking in terms of how it would affect your business?
Yeah. That's one of the hardest transitions I've ever been through, just because once I took that role, it was very shortly after that something like this happened. And it was looking at, I think our leadership team has done a wonderful job of painting our vision and making sure that we are adaptable, and that we're always looking at, what happens if there's an economic downturn? What happens if, and that was something that I felt like we were pretty prepared for, in terms of this is our mission at the end of the day, and how we deliver that for our clients can look differently based on the landscape. And so we had to go through a lot of those changes. And I think the team was so resilient through that. And that's the mindset I had to have, was how do we take care of our clients? How do we make risky bets, which we did. We had a lot of clients that came to us and said, hey, I don't know what's going to happen. So, we've got to reduce what we're doing. And we fully kind of went in and said, hey, we think this is the most important thing for you to do at this time. So we're going to do it no matter what. And, we'll have a conversation about that on the back end. And so we took, some of those risks and really leaned in with our clients during that time, which is what we felt was the right thing to do. And, I think we saw the results of that later in terms of their businesses flourishing and ours in return. And we were, lucky enough to be one of those businesses that grew during the pandemic. And we learned a lot. We we had to hire remote. We're such a culture focused company that was a big learning curve for us. And it was, how do we continue activating our team and giving our team, the time we enjoyed at happy hours and fun events that we did throughout the years? How do we translate that in a different way with our team? So we were just adapting. And, I feel like that has made us, one, really resilient, but two, our team is so quick to shift strategy. We were going day to day in terms of how we were pitching the media. We were going day to day in terms of, what's going out on social today, based on not only the news cycle, but what was going on with each of our clients' businesses. And so whenever you have to do that, you have to come together really tightly as a team. And we were able to do that.
It's funny. I follow a few kind of media advisors or media influencers on social media. And I feel like whenever something big happens, like a pandemic, some of them will tweet out, or they'll say something like, Now, all you social media agencies out there, it's time to pause all of your scheduled tweets because, it inevitably happens that you see in the news, like, Kim Kardashian tweeted right after some big tragedy happened, something that was trite, and maybe there's a greater awareness now, the fact that these things are pre-scheduled in advance, or maybe agencies are better at being like, okay, guys, we got to pause everything for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, we had to do that in Texas last week, and so that's something that we need to be so mindful of. And also pitching the media on the PR side, we need to be mindful that they're incredibly important stories to report on. Obviously, if our clients can support that, we'll come at it that way. But if not, we want to be completely respectful to what's going on in the world. And there's other avenues that we can continue to really focus on bringing the mission to life.
You mentioned your mission, your values. I love that one of your values, the first one listed, is good vibes. I mean, here I am in California. Like, how can I not like that? Well, first of all, what does that mean to you? And secondly, how do you instill something like that within an organization, especially as you mentioned, when you start hiring remote? How do you make sure that those good vibes continue? It's one thing to have good vibes on a Friday in-person happy hour, but it's another if everyone's virtual.
Yeah, absolutely. Good vibes is one of our favorites. And I think if you talk to any of our team members, that's probably the first core value that a lot of them will mention. And it's the one I hear most from our team. But it's all about where our attitude is rooted. And for us, that's that good vibes mentality where we have mutual respect, mutual support, mutual candor in everything that we do. And it's not only to one another, but it's the partners that we work with. We have wonderful, wonderful partners that do a lot of work with our clients as well, based on their area of specialty. We also have good vibes with our clients. They all know that that's one of our core values because they hear it from us consistently. But it's all about, again, the attitude that everybody shows up with every day at work. And when we were virtual, a lot of those things were just picking up the phone and calling one another and seeing how each other was doing. Nothing about any of the transactional work that we were doing. We did the same thing with clients. Just, hey, I'm calling in to check in on you and check in on your family. How are y'all doing? That stuff is so important to us, far beyond, the day-to-day is making sure that we're there for one another. We're supporting one another. We're jumping in whenever we need to. And one thing we do to keep that alive is, every week in our team meeting, we talk about our core values and we have everybody point out what they've observed from that week from team members. And I'll tell you, good vibes is one of the ones that gets pointed out the most.
Like, Joe gave me good vibes when blank, that kind of thing.
Right. Absolutely. It's like, hey, I saw good vibes. They went above and beyond to support me, or they went above and beyond to do something special for me or my family. And so that's something that we want to continue carrying out for not only each other, but for our clients and the community that we serve as well.
How do you think, as we look forward, we're recording this in end of May, June of 2022. Hopefully the pandemic's in the rearview mirror, but life most certainly has changed. Business most certainly has changed. What are some lasting long-term changes that you think that will stick around?
Yeah. I think just in terms of businesses and how they're ran moving forward, I think so many of us found opportunities to focus more on the value that we're delivering, but also become more efficient with that. And so I think that's something that, bringing our team together, everybody working on the same page. One thing that we did during the pandemic that has absolutely changed our business, and at that time, we were doing it because of the situation we were in. But, that's something that we're going to continue on with, is we started open book management. We had just implemented EOS the year before the pandemic. So starting in 2019, and then we started open book management the year of 2020. And the goal was on all levels of the business, everybody had transparency into our goals financially and where we currently were. And so at every level, decisions could be made by those individuals to help focus and accomplish our goals. And so we just wanted to bring that empowerment to everybody on the team so that everybody was rowing in the same direction. And that has been just an incredible, in terms of what we've seen financially for our company, the growth that we've been able to have, and the excitement amongst the team to truly make an impact and understand how everybody impacts the growth of our company and where we want to go.
Yeah, I'm sure we could do a whole interview on that topic alone, because that's a meaty topic. I've read a few books on it. How long did it take you to prepare for that decision? Because the one thing I've read frequently is that you can't just like jump into it willy-nilly. Right. Education has to be a big component of it. You can't just throw out numbers out of context. Right. So the entire team has to be educated on what the numbers mean. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we did 6 months of education before we started really reporting and having everybody track what they were doing individually. And so that those 6 months, I mean, our leadership team just poured and poured and poured into our team, because of course our leadership team was entirely focused of how do we continue to grow the business and do what we want to do in this current stage where the world is changing day by day and we don't know what it's going to look like tomorrow. And so, our CFO took a lot of time preparing, special reports for the team to look at and educating them and quizzing them and doing one-on-one sessions. So it was partial group sessions, partial one-on-one sessions. And we also did something that was really interesting. We also did a few personal financial sessions. So how do you look at your budgeting? How do you look at what you're investing in? How do you do your at-home kind of type P&L, that type of thing, just to give our team member life benefits alongside, this is how we're running the business, but this is also how you can, translate this to your personal life. And we had so many awesome stories from our team members completely transforming the way that they did their personal finances, which was, again, at the end of the day, far beyond what we could imagine this type of program doing for our company.
That's really cool. All right. We're almost out of time. So I want to wrap up with my gratitude question. I'm a big fan of gratitude. And if you were to look around at your peers and contemporaries, however you want to define that, could be others in your industry. I know you're active in EO like I am, in the Austin chapter. So it could be other EO members, entrepreneurs organization. So however you want to define it, who do you respect? Who do you admire? Who would you want to just publicly call out, just kind of thank them for being there for you along the way?
Yeah. If I'm looking really big picture, just in terms of an entrepreneur that I've followed that I don't know personally, but I feel like I do because of how personal they are online. One that's, Sarah Blakely. I mean, she's done a phenomenal job. And again, I don't know her personally, but
another EO member.
But my goodness, I mean, look at what she has done and how she has completely just trailblazed, not only creating her own field, but also, how business is done. And I love even just listening to how she talks about, being a mother, raising her family, supporting others. That just resonates with me. And I love the way she does her social media strategy. Even, I mean, she announced her Blackstone partnership on her personal social media channels before it ever hit any type of official corporate newswire, press release, social media channels. And to me, that says a lot. It says a lot in terms of how she's built her business and the type of influence that she has.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Actually, we have a book club in our company where we pay our team members to read a book and we talk about it on a regular basis. And the first one we did wasn't even a book. It was a masterclass, and it was Sarah Blakely's masterclass. We went through and everyone enjoyed it. They all loved it. Paige, this has been amazing. Where can people go to learn more about you, connect with you, ask you any questions?
Yeah, so you can go to zilkermedia.com. Also, all my social media is at Paige Velasquez. And we also have a new program coming out. So for those of you interested in PR, maybe you're not quite ready to hire a PR firm yet, we have podcastguestinsider.com coming out, and you can learn more about it on that website.
And that is for people who are interested in being on more podcasts, getting exposure, but maybe they're not ready for the full package, hiring an agency to manage it for them. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. It's all about teaching you how to pitch yourself to podcasts and giving you the resources that you need in terms of the actual podcast to target, who's accepting guests, and also how to pitch them. That's
great. Some of my best friendships, relationships, my business partner I connected through podcasting, all those things have come through podcasting. So I love that. I encourage more people to do it. So that's wonderfully you created it. Paige, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, John.
Thank you for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast with John Corcoran. Find out more at smartbusinessrevolution.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list and join the revolution. Revolution. And be listening for the next episode of the Smart Business Revolution podcast.